What brought me to the Lord was I was going through, I'm in business. I didn't have to worry about different things. I mean, I was happy. And nevertheless, when I say happy, I was happy because, it wasn't like I was struggling for money and different things like that because I was working hard and everything. But there were yet things going on in my life that I was not happy about.
Okay.
And even to the point of where I became suicidal. And I can remember that I was up at the lake and this thing had gotten so heavy on me. This I don't even know how to describe it. I know now it was demonic. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, I got to the place where I heard the voice of the enemy. There again, I didn't know that's who it was, but I heard him tell me how to take my life. He gave me 3 different ways that I could take my life. And, as I look back over that period of time, I realized how much God's hand was there to protect me. Mm-hmm. Because when I say the enemy, he gave me 3 ways that were, when I sat there, one of the ways he said, if you just walk out in the water and just drown yourself, and it'll be over. And then, he said, or if you don't want to do that, you just shoot yourself. Because I was a licensed gun holder because of the business. Just shoot yourself. And, so you're pondering all these things because unless you've ever been where the enemy is attacking your mind and everything, and you're in that position, you may not understand what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But it was very, very strong. And I'm pondering each one of these things, the different scenarios that, you walk out in the water, you can drown, it'd be over. Shoot yourself in the head, it would be over. Then he said, no, do it like the rich and famous. Take a bunch of pills, and that'll end it. Of all the 3, that sounded the best. But I remember that I left the lake, and I came home, and I began to walk around out in my backyard, and I remember I was just pondering so many different things. And finally, I got to the point where I walked back into my house, and I fell on my knees, and I said, help, Lord. And I didn't say Jesus because I didn't know what to say. But I honestly knew I needed help. Mm-hmm. And when I said, help, Lord, it was as if a car had came off my back, the weight of what I was carrying. And suddenly, just like that, it was over. And I remember that I ran into we had a bookshelf. Well, it wasn't a bookshelf. The whole wall was a bookshelf. But nevertheless, I remembered that I had bought the Bible paraphrased.
Okay.
Years ago. And I know we had the big family Bible. You know what I'm talking about, y'all? The big Bible that sits on the table. We had one of those. I grabbed up the Bible paraphrased, and I took the cassettes that I had, and I ran to my mom's house. Mm-hmm. And I was telling her what had happened to me because I didn't really know what happened to me. And so anyway, I remember telling her, Mom, all I know is I got to go to church. I said, I have to go to church. This was a Thursday. And so after I went to my mom and told her whatever I told her, because like I said, I didn't say I got saved, I got born again because I didn't know about that. I just know I didn't have the weight on me that was there before. And so after that, I left and went back up to the lake. And I remember on my way to the lake, I was listening to the Bible on cassettes. And I remember saying to the Lord, I said, Lord, which one do I play? I don't know anything about this. I know in the beginning, God did something with the heaven and earth. I remember that. I remember what I learned in Vacation Bible Study I learned in John, in my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. And I said, I remember that from Vacation Bible camp. And so anyway, he told me the particular tape to pull out, and I put it in, and I played that while I drove up to the lake, which is about half an hour away. And during that time, it's amazing because I have to fast forward a little bit. Remember, that was on a Thursday. Well, Sunday, we went to church. And I had remembered telling my mom some years prior when that particular church that I went to was only a foundation. It was that's all that was there. And I remember we were going to another mall, my mom and I had said to her, Mom, one day I'm going to go to that church. I didn't know what kind of church it was going to be, but I went back in my mind and thought, I remember saying that. So anyway, when she said, where do you want to go to church? I told her that one church. And so anyway, we went to that church on the following Sunday. And this is the reason why I bring it up. I didn't know anything about the Bible, but the bishop who preached on that I heard on that cassette tape.
Wow.
On that Thursday when I was going up to the lake.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And my salvation itself was unique within the fact that the bishop had preached a message, like I said, the message of what I knew because I'd heard it on the cassette. And so then after he got done preaching the message, then his wife, who's a pastor, she got up and was doing the altar call. And so I remember how perplexed she was, because when she gave the altar call, the Lord kept pushing her. Because, and I remember she would not let it go. I remember she just wouldn't. And so she kept telling a few more things about the person, because she operated in the prophetic, very much so. And I remember that she read my roadmap, because, she even said the person has a gun. And like I said, I was a licensed gun holder. I didn't know you don't go to church packing, y'all. Okay, don't do that. I didn't know you didn't do that. I was really young. And so nevertheless, she mentioned that. I remember even that. And I remember that my mom and I were sitting close to the door, because I had said to Mom, in case we have to get out in a hurry, because I didn't know what they do in church. And nevertheless, somehow the pastor, after she had made several attempts, kept getting ready to go back up the steps to go, because she finally said, Lord, I've done all I know to do. And but he still would not release her.
Wow.
And so I was watching every move she made. My eyes were definitely on her. And nevertheless, when somehow she went down the aisle, reached over these two people, and put her hand out to me. And I will say this. I knew the person was me all along, but I couldn't move. My feet were literally glued to the floor. This is not that I was afraid, not that I was scared. My feet were glued to the floor. And my mom had told me the same thing about herself, because she said, I know that it was you. She said, I wanted to help you, but I couldn't. I could not. She said, I was glued to the floor. And it wasn't until the pastor reached her hand over the other two people and said, that person is you, won't you come? And that's what began my journey. Oh, I might add, I got baptized and everything, got the works. Lord wanted to make sure he got me good.